There's a strange moment that happens to almost everyone eventually. You're standing in a grocery store, or lying awake at 2 am, or staring at a bank notification that somehow feels smaller than it should, and you realize something uncomfortable. Some people seem to move through money like they understand a secret language the rest of the world never learned. Not louder, not flashier, not even smarter in the obvious way, just calmer. While everyone else panics, chases trends, copies crowds, burns themselves out trying to win, they quietly keep building year after year, decade after decade, and eventually the gap becomes impossible to ignore. That's what makes the Warren Buffett way so unsettling. Because beneath the investing advice, beneath the stock market stories, beneath the billions of dollars and legendary reputation, it's really a book about human behavior, about patience in a culture addicted to speed, about clarity in a world engineered to confuse you, about emotional discipline in an economy built on emotional reaction. And maybe the strangest part of all, the man at the center of it doesn't live like the richest investor in history. No private island mythology, no endless displays of luxury, no dramatic genius persona, just an old man in Omaha, drinking Coca Cola, reading for hours every day, thinking slowly while the rest of the world loses its mind. And somehow, that simple approach built one of the greatest financial empires humanity has ever seen. But the deeper you go into Buffett's philosophy, the less it feels like investing advice, and the more it starts feeling like a survival guide for modern life. Because what Buffett truly mastered wasn't money, it was decision making. And most people never realize how much their life is shaped by decisions made emotionally, impulsively, desperately, or under the pressure of other people's expectations. That's where this story really begins. The world tells you wealth is built through intensity. Move faster, work harder, take bigger risks, never stop. But Buffett built his fortune doing almost the opposite. He waited, and waiting sounds simple until you actually try it. Because psychologically, humans hate stillness. We hate uncertainty. We hate missing out. We hate watching other people appear to get rich faster than us. Especially now. Everywhere you look, somebody is pretending they found the shortcut. A new crypto coin, a luxury lifestyle course, a 10x strategy, a viral stock tip, a 20-year-old millionaire screaming into a podcast microphone about freedom. And underneath all of it is the same emotional trigger. If you don't move now, you'll be left behind. Buffett understood something terrifying about this. Most financial mistakes are not mathematical mistakes, they're emotional ones. People don't lose money because they can't calculate. They lose money because fear and greed hijack their thinking. And this started long before Buffett became Buffett. As a kid, he was obsessed with numbers, not because numbers were exciting, but because they felt predictable, safe. At an age when most children were playing outside, Buffett was studying businesses, selling gum, tracking profits, reading financial reports for fun, and people love romanticizing that part of the story. But there's another layer beneath it. Buffett discovered early that understanding value gave him a kind of emotional stability most people never experience. Because when you understand what something is truly worth, the noise around it stops controlling you. That idea would eventually become the foundation of everything, not just investing, life, because most people spend their entire existence reacting to appearances instead of value. They date people based on attention instead of character, choose careers based on status instead of meaning, buy things to impress people they don't even like, chase opportunities they don't understand because everyone else seems excited, and the market punishes this behavior brutally. But life does too. Buffett's mentor, Benjamin Graham, introduced a concept that completely changed the way Buffett saw the world. Intrinsic value, the idea that something has a real underlying worth, regardless of what people currently feel about it. That sounds obvious at first, until you realize modern society runs almost entirely on perceived value instead. Perception drives trends, perception drives status, perception drives social media, perception drives panic, And perception changes every 5 seconds. One day something is the future, the next day it's forgotten. One year a person is celebrated, the next they're irrelevant. Most people unconsciously build their identity around this unstable emotional system, which means their confidence rises and falls with public opinion. Buffett refused to live that way. When everyone got excited, he became cautious. When everyone panicked, he became curious. And psychologically, that is unbelievably difficult. Because humans are tribal creatures. We copy crowds to feel safe. If thousands of people are buying something, we assume they know something we don't. If everyone is afraid, we become afraid too. This instinct once kept humans alive, but in markets, it destroys people. Buffett once said the stock market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient. But honestly, that sentence describes far more than investing. Think about relationships. People ruin good relationships chasing emotional highs. Think about careers. People abandon meaningful progress because someone else appears more successful. Think about goals. Most people quit right before compounding begins. Because compounding is emotionally boring in the beginning. That's the part nobody wants to hear. Real growth often looks invisible for a very long time. And modern culture has trained people to mistake visibility for progress. But Buffett built his entire philosophy around delayed gratification, quiet accumulation, small consistent decisions, long horizons. Not because it sounded noble, but because reality kept proving it worked. There's another reason Buffett's mindset feels so unnatural today. He intentionally stayed inside his circle of competence, which sounds simple until you understand how ego works. Most people desperately want to appear intelligent, so they pretend to understand things they actually don't, especially in environments where confidence gets rewarded more than accuracy. And nowhere is this more dangerous than money. Buffett became legendary partly because he was willing to say something most powerful people hate saying. I don't know. He avoided businesses he didn't understand, even when everyone else got rich from them temporarily. And during the dot-com bubble, this made him look outdated, ancient, slow, finished. The world mocked him because he refused to invest in companies he couldn't evaluate properly. Imagine the psychological pressure of that moment. Everywhere around you, people are becoming overnight millionaires. The media celebrates a new era. Experts insist the old rules no longer apply, and you sit there doing almost nothing. Most people cannot tolerate that level of social isolation because humans would rather fail with the crowd than look foolish alone. But Buffett understood something deeper. You do not need to swing at every opportunity. In baseball, a batter eventually gets forced to swing. In investing, you can wait forever. That changes everything because the greatest opportunities are often destroyed by unnecessary action. And honestly, this applies to modern life more than ever. People destroy their focus constantly. Too many goals, too many opinions, too much stimulation, too many comparisons. Everyone's reacting, very few are thinking. Buffett's edge was never raw intelligence alone, it was restraint. The ability to remain emotionally stable while others became emotionally reactive. And that trait becomes incredibly valuable in chaotic environments, which explains why calm people often seem powerful, not because they feel no fear, but because they aren't controlled by it. There's a moment in Buffett's journey that reveals something almost uncomfortable about human nature. As his wealth grew, his lifestyle barely changed. Same house, simple habits, predictable routines. And modern culture struggles to process this. Because society treats money as proof of identity. People want visible evidence that they've made it. Bigger house, more luxury, more signals of importance. But Buffett saw money differently. To him, money was freedom. Freedom to think independently. Freedom to avoid desperation. Freedom to say no. And that's a radically different psychological relationship with wealth. Most people don't actually want money. They want relief. Relief from anxiety. Relief from insecurity. Relief from comparison. Relief from uncertainty about the future. But if your emotional habits stay broken, More money often just amplifies them. An insecure person with money becomes more insecure in expensive ways. An impulsive person becomes impulsive at larger scales. Buffett understood that temperament matters more than brilliance. In fact, some of the smartest people financially fail because intelligence without emotional control becomes dangerous. You start believing you can outsmart reality itself, and reality eventually humiliates everyone who thinks they are untouchable. That's another hidden theme inside Buffett's philosophy: humility, not fake modesty, not weakness, accurate self awareness, knowing what you know, knowing what you don't, knowing where your emotions distort your judgment. That kind of clarity is rare because modern life constantly encourages performance instead of honesty. People curate identities instead of building character, and Buffett spent decades doing the opposite, quietly building substance beneath the surface. One of Buffett's most powerful ideas sounds almost too simple to matter: buy wonderful businesses at fair prices, not mediocre businesses at amazing prices. At first glance, it sounds like ordinary investing advice, but underneath it is a profound insight about life itself. Quality compounds, and cheap shortcuts eventually reveal their hidden costs. Think about health. People search endlessly for extreme transformations instead of sustainable habits. Think about friendships. Cheap attention feels good temporarily, but deep trust changes your life. Think about work. People optimize for immediate salary while ignoring environments that slowly destroy their spirit. Buffett looked for businesses with durable advantages. Companies people would still trust, still need, still respect 10 or 20 years later. That required thinking beyond temporary excitement. And that's difficult because humans are wired for short term emotion. We overvalue what's immediate, undervalue what's lasting. This is why so many people sabotage long term fulfillment for short term relief. The extra purchase, the impulsive decision, the emotional reaction, the need for validation right now. But Buffett's entire philosophy rewards consistency over intensity. And consistency is deeply unglamorous. Nobody applauds you for being disciplined quietly. Nobody makes movies about patient decision making. But over long enough periods, steady behavior becomes almost superhuman. That's what compounding really is. Not just financial growth, behavioral growth. Tiny decisions repeated long enough to become destiny. And honestly, that idea can either feel inspiring or terrifying because it means your daily habits are not small. They are votes. Votes for the person you eventually become. Buffett also understood something the modern world constantly forgets. Attention is one of the most valuable assets on earth, and most people surrender it completely. He spends enormous amounts of time reading, thinking, reflecting, not constantly reacting. Imagine how unusual that is now. Most people cannot sit quietly for 10 minutes without reaching for stimulation. Phones, notifications, videos, opinions, outrage, noise. The average mind today is exhausted before it even begins thinking. And exhausted people make emotional decisions. That's profitable for industries, terrible for individuals. Buffett protected his mental environment aggressively because clear thinking requires space. And maybe that's one of the biggest hidden lessons in his entire philosophy. A peaceful mind sees opportunities, a distracted mind misses. But peaceful thinking has become rare because distraction feels easier than reflection. Reflection forces confrontation with fear, with insecurity, with uncertainty, with uncomfortable truths about how we spend our lives. Noise helps people escape themselves temporarily, but Buffett's success came largely from his willingness to sit with reality patiently, even boring reality, especially boring reality, because truth often hides beneath excitement, and modern culture has become addicted to excitement. There's another part of Buffett's story people misunderstand badly. He wasn't emotionless. He simply designed systems that protected him from emotional chaos. That's different because people imagine discipline as some kind of superhuman absence of feeling. But discipline usually means creating environments where your emotions have less power over your actions. Buffett avoided unnecessary temptation, avoided debt, avoided complexity, avoided constant decision fatigue. He simplified aggressively. And simplicity is underrated because complexity feels intelligent. But complexity often hides confusion. Simple principles followed consistently beat complicated strategies abandoned emotionally. That's true financially. And psychologically, think about how many people already know what would improve their life. Sleep better, spend less, focus deeper, exercise consistently, stop comparing themselves constantly. The hard part isn't information, it's emotional consistency. And Buffett mastered emotional consistency better than almost anyone. Not perfectly, but persistently, which may be even more important. At some point, Buffett stopped looking like an investor and started looking almost like a philosopher accidentally trapped inside capitalism. Because the deeper message of his life isn't make more money, it's build a life that compounds peacefully. That sentence changes depending on who hears it. For some people, it means financial wisdom. For others, it means protecting their attention. For others, it means choosing relationships carefully, or learning patience, or escaping comparison, or thinking independently for the first time in years. Because independence is frightening. Once you stop copying crowds, you become responsible for your own decisions. No one wants that pressure, which is why most people unconsciously outsource thinking to trends, to influencers, to social approval. But Buffett spent decades proving something quietly revolutionary. You do not need to participate in collective insanity to succeed. You can think slowly, live simply, act carefully, wait patiently, and still build something extraordinary. Maybe even because of those things. Near the end of his life, people kept asking Buffett variations of the same question: how do we become successful like you? And his answers often sounded strangely human compared to the complexity people expected. Choose the right people, protect your reputation, keep learning, avoid unnecessary stupidity, think long term, simple ideas. But simple does not mean easy. In fact, the hardest truths are often the simplest ones because there's nowhere to hide from them. You either live them or you don't. And maybe that's why Buffett's philosophy continues to resonate far beyond investing. Because deep down, people are exhausted. Exhausted from speed, from comparison, from endless pressure to optimize every second of existence. Buffett represents something almost forgotten now: a slower form of intelligence, one built on clarity instead of performance. And maybe that's why his story feels strangely comforting. Not because he became rich, but because he proved you don't have to become chaotic to win. So eventually, the book stops feeling like a guide to the stock market and starts feeling like a mirror, because every lesson inside it quietly asks the same uncomfortable question: what are you compounding right now? Fear, distraction, impulse, comparison, or patience, clarity, discipline, understanding? Because whether people notice it or not, their lives are compounding every single day. Their habits compound, their thoughts compound, their relationships compound, their decisions compound, and one day they wake up inside the life those patterns built. That's the real Warren Buffett way. Not becoming a billionaire, but understanding that small choices, made consistently, shape reality more powerfully than dramatic moments ever will. And maybe the strangest part is this: most people will hear that, agree with it completely, and still continue living reactively. Because knowledge changes almost nothing by itself, applied patience changes everything. And perhaps that's why Buffett's greatest advantage was never money. It was temperament, the ability to remain steady in a world addicted to emotional extremes. A world that constantly whispers, hurry, react, consume, compare, prove yourself. While somewhere in Omaha, an old man quietly kept reading, kept thinking, kept waiting, and built an empire from calm decisions repeated over a lifetime. Not flashy, not loud, just consistent, and in the end, that may be the most powerful kind of wisdom there is.